Brenetta Henry is in the house.
Good
Brenetta,
morning.
good morning. Oh man, I've been waiting to have this interview with you. All those conversations we've had. How are you this morning?
I am wonderful, wonderful. Just so glad to be here. Honored to have this opportunity to sit with you. I was so looking forward to. I'm just blessed. I'm just blessed.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it here. So, everyone, you're back again with myself as host, Dr. Alice Farrell. And as you know, this is Around the World and Back with Dr. Alice Farrell. And I'm going to have a great time today with my friend and colleague here, Brenetta Henry. And so, just as I always do, I will give the guests the opportunity to introduce themselves, but I do need to do just a few pieces of things here. You know that I am all about the eradication of institutional racism, breaking down barriers, dismantling the systemic structural oppression, looking at disparities across system, promoting equity. I am about taking and unpacking and moving out from a sandwiching position, the equity piece. If you know my
Yeah.
writing, you know that, right? So let me just now share, just for a moment, why I'm excited. I'm excited because this advocate before you, Brenetta Henry, has been in my life for over a decade, a long time. And I want to honor someone who's connected with both of us. She has since passed away, but I want to honor her this morning in acknowledging what she has done for Connecticut and for parents and communities all over. Her name is Merva Jackson. Merva Jackson was the executive director of AFCAMP, African Caribbean American Parents with Children with Disabilities. That was the name of the organization. And the organization is still in existence right now, being administrating by the current executive director, Ann Smith. What I'd like to share about Merva Jackson is that before she passed away, the last conversation I had with her, we were, what part of the last conversation, we were in Boston and I visited her at the hospital there. And she shared with me a case that she was working on. And she said, my sister, it can't be business as usual. She said, a colleague of ours, Dr. Janet Williams, who is an adult and adolescent psychiatrist and was an avid faith member of the First Church. I want to let you know, and this is what Mervis was saying to me. She said, one of our generals has passed on. It can't be business as usual. Speaking to the inequities that were in existence then and still continues today. Speaking about the lack of culturally competent, culturally sensitive, culturally responsive services that were provided, that was the essence of what was provided out there in the communities. So no sensitivity, no cultural competence, lack of an ability to engage and approach and connect with families. That's what she was saying. It cannot continue, right? And so I want to acknowledge Merva. She took time to advocate. She took time to go to the legislature. She took the time to be in the community across systems at all tables. And what she did for me is that she opened my eyes to all of the disparities. I was an adjunct professor, and as soon as I'm finished with this piece, I'm going to do a component regarding Brenetta. I was an adjunct professor at the master's level School of Social Work in West Hartford, the University of Connecticut. And I was teaching human behavior and social environment to social workers. I invited Merva to come in because I was teaching on community organizing and mobilizing, international advocacy, organizational culture, and I wanted my students to hear from someone in the field. She came in and tore that session up. She spoke with such power. The fire and the passion, the content that she delivered, and her delivery process was phenomenal, made such an impact on my students. And so I want to acknowledge her. I want to acknowledge her family members who made a lot of sacrifices for her to be able to do what she did. And she left a tremendous legacy. And a part of that legacy is she was able to educate, support, nurture, and push different people across the world into a space where they took on leadership positions and had their voices heard at decision-making tables. One of those voices is right here before you, Brenetta Henry. And I'm going to let Brenetta tell her story in terms of how she got involved in advocacy. So this particular segment of the show is going to be about you traveling with us on a journey from the moment that she came into this advocacy realm, connected to the education system and her son, and then moved into the partnership and partners in policy making training on the guidance of Merva Jackson. And then now she sits at decision making tables, policy making tables. So I want us to just hang around a little bit. Let's hear the journey as I ask a few questions. And with that said, Ms. Brenetta Henry, I was writing left and right when you were sharing with me all the committees that you were a part of. And I think I got 15, with maybe 2 of them former. Okay, so I'm going to just run them down for a quick moment just to put it on the platform. And then you take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself. All right?
Okay.
All right. So everyone, literally, I'm reading them off. Co-chair of the DCF Region 4 Advisory Council. Member and co-chair of the Citizen Review Panel, DCF Connected, Department of Children and Families. Consumer and Family Advisory Council. Member of the Region Hartford 4 Local Interagency Service Team, which is connected with Juvenile Justice. Member of the Parent Advisory Council for Region 4 for the LIST, which is the Local Interagency Service Team again. She's a member of the Medical Home Advisory Council, Department of Public Health. State Health Improvement Plan, she's a member, Department of Public Health here. Former member of Connecticut Behavioral Health Advisory Council, and she's a former member because they have a time period that they're able to serve, and then other family members are able to take on that role. She was appointed to that council by the State Advisory Council, we know as SAC, who appointed her to the Connecticut Behavioral Health Advisory Council. She's a member of the Juvenile Justice Oversight Policy Committee. At the time that I was doing some of the work, it was Representative Tony Walker and Senator Tony Harp at the time. And I understand Representative Tony Walker is still doing this piece. She's also a member of the Coordination of Care, which is a committee of the Connecticut Behavioral Health Oversight Council. Not finished yet, everyone. Child and Adolescent Quality Improvement Committee. Also, recently, because of recent events, the Connecticut Behavioral Health Oversight Committee established a Diversity and Equity Committee. And who's a member of that? Yours truly here, Brenetta Henry. I'm almost there, everyone. Oh, my goodness. Consumers, oh, my goodness. The other piece that I have here, and Brenetta, I'm going to have you speak to this in a little while, but this is the Consumer Advisory Council piece that's connected with the Connecticut Behavioral Health Oversight Committee. So with that said, everyone, this individual can tell you about Connecticut's landscape from inside working with systems folk and from out in the community as a member of the local community, as a part of her faith community, as a part of systems. Did you notice? She cut across systems, child welfare, education, juvenile justice. Let me tell you, I'm looking at it, public health. She's cutting across them. So I'm going to stop there because I could go on, right? Brenetta, share with us whatever you want to share in this introductory piece.
Well, good morning and thank you. I want to also thank you for that beautiful insight on Merva because I truly feel that I am a legacy of hers. She took me under her wing when I was just so overwhelmed, didn't know where to go, no information whatsoever. Alice told, Dr. Farrell told you, my name is Brenetta Henry, and I'm a mother of 4, grandmother of 6, great grandmother of 3. I got this field because of my youngest son, who has autism. I was having such a hard time with him through schooling, and not even knowing what autism really was and how he needed services and things of that nature. So, who worked for Office of Protection and Advocacy told me, her name was Cheryl Shepard. She said, you know what? I have somebody that can help you. And I'm like, who? I just don't know where to go. And she contacted Merva Jackson. I went to a PPT meeting, and here comes this little short lady with these long dreads. And I'm like, okay. She introduced herself. They called us in the room. I had never been to a PPT meeting where it was conducted in that manner. Mm-hmm. And as she spoke, I saw the power that she had. And I'm like, we have the power to do this? Oh my goodness. So that turned on a light for me right there. So it's like, I need to get connected with her. I need to find out the ins and outs. She took me under her wing. She started training me on the PPT process. She started just showing me the things necessary to do. And through that, it's like, I just was like, oh, wow, and then she employed me. As she was training me, she sent me out to assist persons in PPTs. She just had an impact on me. And I am so grateful to this day. We never understand why things happen or why people, walk in our paths and why we do the things we do, because I really couldn't understand it. But then, as my spiritual impact came upon, and I started, understanding the word, Jeremiah 1:5 said, before you were born in your mother's womb, he knew the plans he had for me, So everything that I go through, I can always go to scripture and see how it reflects my life. And I understand now why I was put in this position. So I couldn't understand. I thank God for the child that I have. People think that persons with disabilities have issues. We're the one with the disability, because once you walk in the light of a person with a different disability, you're walking to a whole new realm. You're seeing things so differently. And that's the same way I look at equity. They haven't walked into our world yet, but now we're about to bring you into our world so you can see the inequities and the injustices. So that's me in a nutshell. I really want to be the voice. A lot of times we think we have to be seen in the community. No, I'd rather be at those tables and giving my input in there, because I need you in the community to tell me so I can bring that to the table so we can now discuss it. And as you're still in the community, I can have you pull more from the community, come to those tables so they can now discuss it. So that's me in a nutshell.
Brenetta, thank you. Legacy, Merva Jackson, right here in front of everyone. Let me just pause just for a moment, because when you mention your son and you mention the autism piece, and it just reminded me, yesterday I was training some folk out in North Carolina who are working with the population group with parents with their children of varied abilities, and the sensitivity, the compassion, the equity It has got to be a priority. Has
Yeah.
got to be a priority. And so thank you for putting that out there. Let's move right into the space. This is a space where years ago, you and I were together. We were together in the community collaborative that Merva co-chaired and I
Mhm.
co-chaired, and that was the Hartford West Hartford Community Collaborative. It was a whole system that came out of the Kid Care Initiative, legislatively established and connected with the Department of Children and Families. And we were co-chairing. And over a period of time, Brenetta, I saw you moving into the legislative subcommittee, the juvenile justice, juvenile review board pieces of work connected to that collaborative. And I just want you to just share with folk what that was like. You started out with Merva sending you off and signing you up for the Partners in Policy Making training. And I know Molly Cole is out there, was part of that. Shout out to you, Molly. You're still
Yes,
doing the
ma'am.
work of the work, right? And so just thinking about what that was for you to go to a training, now being part of a collaborative, and the leader of the collaborative is helping you to develop in this area, because I want to talk about legislative testifying and all of that soon. All right? So go right ahead,
Hmm.
take us from there, community collaborative work.
Wow. As you know, like you said, we've been connected for a long time. 21 years, Alex. 21 years. And
Wow.
it's been, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Mm.
Yes, Merva, she saw something in me that I didn't. And not only that, her concern and care for communities and making sure that families are connected and their voices at the table. You know, not only that, let's form something that they're not looking at. And every time she went to form something, I had a lived experience. So it was just like, boom. So when she started talking about the juvenile review board, and she was like, okay, you went through partners in policy making. Oh, you're going through partners in policy making. I'm like, yeah. She said, what is your assignment? I
Mm.
said, I didn't find one yet. She said, you know, we're doing the juvenile review board because she had formed the juvenile justice committee where
Right.
that was the first committee that had formed. So she was like, okay, we're talking about doing the juvenile review board. So my assignment turned into setting up a focus group with some of the state reps, some of the people from court support services with CSSD, and some of the family members to talk about some of the issues in juvenile justice. And we had 2 forums that I had to set up and plan and move through. So that was my homework. And once I got into that, that sparked another thing in my life that says, look, this is something we got to do. It's plaguing our community. There's so much over identification in every aspect of everything that we do. And we're not getting the services that we need, where everything that we need is being taken away. How do we do this? So that struck something that kept me moving forward and saying, I got to be a part of this. I got to, have my voice there. Um,
Wow.
and that's how that came about. And as that came about, other things was just coming up. It was connection to services where medical homes started coming into play, where she was like, nope, anything that came up, and she knew, because she got to know the relationship with me and my family. She knew what was plaguing me, and she was like, nope, you need to be there. You have a lived experience. You need to know, have your voice there so they'll know how to do this. This is the, and as I grew, I was this angry parent because I didn't have the knowledge of, I had the knowledge but didn't know how to groom it and cusp it. And she kept after me, and she kept me in trainings, and she kept moving me forward. And as I moved forward, it wasn't until I came into my spirituality, until I came in the true, being that true believer of Christ, that he started to mold me, and he started to, just mold my voice to speak the way I needed to speak to get those things to be put across. So I just thank God for the ministry. I look at it as a ministry now. I don't look at it as a hindrance. Everything I go through is for a purpose.
Mm.
And it's a reason. And I thank God for those reasons that I had to go through. May they have been harsh, but they're still work out for the good of him, and for the good of my family and the good of the families in my community. Because had I not went through that, I would not be the person to be giving that push
Yes.
in these tables that I sit at. And I thank God for having the opportunity to be that push for my community and the families that we serve in the community.
My goodness. Brenetta, there's so many different things that I just want to jump on in terms of what you just shared. When you talk about the Partners in Policymaking training and then having a project associated with that, right? And then going into all the different spaces, you've moved from being trained to being cultivated to being shaped and you developing yourself to being part of all of those 12, 13 decision-making tables. So from participating in partners in policy making training to being a partner in policy making and decision making settings, venues, and tables. I am just watching that, and I'm just going to speak for a moment. Viewers, I am hoping that you are picking up some things right here, that it takes a process. It takes individuals who are willing to be committed to supporting parents and community leaders to help them through that process to get them to that place where they can feel confident and comfortable enough to begin to express themselves and have that voice in all those on all those decision making tables. It really, when you're lifting up for me these pieces, Merva was always looking for the opportunities to plug you in, but not leaving you there without supporting you. She did make sure you get stretched, sometimes stretched beyond what you think you could handle, but that was part of the grooming process. And I think that's one of the things I want to lift up for the viewers, that it is necessary to commit to the ongoing equity work. And in order to do that, you must be willing to come alongside individuals with lived experience and help and support them in the way that they need the help and support. For many, I'm speaking again just to the viewers right now. For many, they don't need any additional support. They're there. They can do it. They can advocate for themselves, their family, their communities. They have their voices. They have their platforms. But there's so many in your organizations, so many who are coming and accessing services for behavioral health, basic human needs, substance treatment, that you have the gift of that opportunity to help to identify, lift up, and encourage their voices to be amplified. It is imperative. It doesn't just happen with some. So now coming right back to you, Brenetta, I do want to now take us to the place, as you mentioned, you were an angry parent. You didn't really know, based on what you're saying, how to express and share it in a way that folks might be able to grab hold of it. And I want to share a point that I had about maybe 2 years ago, almost. I was at the Connecticut legislature, and often when I'm there, I know I would text you to ask you to send me any updated meetings coming up, coordination of care, whatever meetings that's coming up, medical home, to keep me abreast. And that was one way of me making sure I stay up to date on what's happening. And I really appreciate you're always willing to just bring me up to speed on what's going on. So while I was at the legislature that day, I was speaking to a lobbyist, and then I saw Senator Winfield, Gary Winfield, and I approached him because I had two connections, two connections with him. One, Merva Jackson had introduced me to him years ago when we were talking about the establishment of the Juvenile Review Board in Hartford, because Hartford did not have one, and at the time there were 30 of them in the surrounding places. And so Merva introduced me, and Merva was sharing with him with her passionate way about the need for him to get involved and to talk about this and so forth. Subsequent to that, I saw him, and I had my daughter with me, Crystal, and I was showing her around the building, taking her to see where the bills are, picking up the bills, showing her, walking, giving her that exposure. And I spoke with him, and he took out his card and wrote a note to Crystal. And to this day, Crystal has that card. So here I am, and I met him, and I went over to him and I said, you know what? We're out there speaking with parents, families, community members to get them involved in the legislative process in terms of public hearing attendance, in terms of creating their testimonies. And I wanted to know what are some of the things that, and kind of the gems that he would share with me as a legislator in terms of how we prepare parents and families, right? And so he said, come to my office. And we went up to the office, and he showed me some things, and he shared and he spoke regarding what are some of the strategies and how to really help parents tell their stories. Because often the legislators do not know the nuances of the challenges before them and what are captured in the bills. And the parents and
Right.
community members' voices are essential. So bringing it back now, share with us about the work that was happening at the time. I remember Keep the Promise Coalition used to do training to get parents and
Mhm.
members of the community prepared. Can you speak about that just a little bit?
Yes, Keep the Promise had a legislative training, which they're still having those legislative training, which was awesome. They had like two a year. The first one gets you involved in what the legislative process is and things such as that nature. The second one gets you more in depth of going around, meeting your senators, going to the chambers, having a scavenger hunt and things such as that nature. But they did it in such a fun way to let you know how you're to prepare the bills, how many days in advance you have to, submit your testimony. And because a bill could be put out and they could have a hearing in 7 days, but those people didn't know that the weekend days were also counted in those days, and or 5 days, and the weekend days were counted in it. So that just give you one day to prepare. But it also showed you a format of how to form your testimony, teaching you, giving you limits on, you have a 3-minute limit. They put you in this hot seat and let you do a testimony and give you that 3-minute limit. And what I noticed about that 3-minute limit, and I'm going to give this little tidbit right here. Yes, we have 3 minutes to testify, but if you touch the heart of those legislators through your story, passionately and professionally and eloquently, you will see those legislators and those representatives asking you questions. So now you have went over that 3-minute limit, and you're getting into the core issues of what it is that they really need to know. So the presentation and being passionate and being pleasant and pushing it across will bring you past that 3-minute limit. So I just want to put that little tidbit in there. So, and that's what we've gotten out of that.
Beautiful. Thank you. You reminded me, I'm smiling because you reminded me of something that occurred when I was at the legislature. So, folk, you know that sometimes you have to spend hours upon hours upon hours before you get to testify. Often the system folk get to testify and then they're calling folk. I remember Merva, we all go in there and getting it signed, sign up our names, and oh my, people have to go. Their children are getting out of school, and who's going to be there just in case they call us? And it was just such a dynamic process. But I remember that they
Being there till 11 o'clock in the morning.
yeah. You go right around in the night. You're all the way now 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and it's late night, and we still gotta hang out. Still gotta hang out. We have to testify, right? So I remember a couple of things that I was at the legislature, and Merva said to me, Alice, I need you to testify. And I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean you need me to testify? Merva, wait, I did not submit a written testimony. What do you mean? So now I'm getting nervous, right? Right. This was the first time that I am actually going to testify at the Connecticut legislature. And I believe it was children committee there, right? And so I am as nervous as can be. But when Marva asks you, you can do it, right? We know that, right?
Yeah.
Marva asks, we
Yeah.
do it, right? So I said, okay, if they're willing to have me testify, okay, I'll do it. So without the written testimony, they allowed me to come and sit and testify of my experience as a licensed clinical social worker working with children and families and looking at the needs of families in our communities. Subsequent to that, I was at the legislature waiting to testify, and it so happened I had to run back to Catholic Charities for a meeting. When I got back, Brenetta, it was over. Okay, it was over. I went into the ladies' room, and Commissioner Patricia Wilson Coker at the time for DSS was
Uh-huh.
there. And she turned to me and said, I thought you were here earlier. I thought you were going to testify. I said, yes, but I had to run out. She said, oh, man. Okay, wait, come. So she carries me in. Senator Harp is coming out. And she started to share that I wanted to testify, but I had to leave. Senator Harp looked at me and asked me, you want to testify? I said, yes, actually, I do. I do want to testify. She went back in and asked the legislators, hold on. I know we ended, but hold on. We have one more testimony. And when I sat to testify and started to share, it was, as you said, they extended the time because now they were asking me questions.
Mm-hmm.
They were asking questions, just as in the first time that I presented. It was at the time Representative Doug McCory, was
Mm-hmm.
asking questions back and back, and then he just triggered. So I absolutely know what you're talking about, Brenetta. When you
Mm-hmm.
sit there and they have questions, they will ask the questions, and we get to share. So right here, Brenetta, if you can bring us back to this testifying right now, as of last night, I've been getting emails from Reverend Robin Anderson. I've been looking out for on Facebook and seeing Bishop John Seldes and his communication about Senate Bill 820, Senate Bill 5, HB 6662. All of these things that's connected to racism or voting and so on. And they're encouraging people. Although the submission of the written testimony would have been by 3 p.m. yesterday, some verbals can happen today, and they were encouraging folks. So can you just speak to the folk who are listening here who may think that their voices, it's not going to matter? Share with them how important it is to participate in the legislative process.
Oh, your voice definitely matters, even though sometimes the outcomes doesn't come our way, but your voice matters, and they're going to remember everything that was said. Not only that, a lot of times when you're testifying in those committees, those things are broadcast live. So therefore, if you think people don't hear, people are hearing you, people are listening at you. So even though they don't, you have your community watching, you have other people watching that saying, no, they're absolutely right. Let's join forces with them and let's make a movement. I used to say the same thing, but as I said, it took 7 years for the raise the age. No one thought that the raise the age would happen, but we stayed on top of that. We were in the community. We held up signs. We had forums. 7 years. But it happened. I've seen change through the voice, the movement, through legislation, and making sure that you connect with your legislators. People have to remember you're voting these people in to be your voice. So if you're voting them in to be your voice, make sure you connect with them to make sure your voice is heard. Don't get mad and say, oh, they ain't doing what I'm doing. I ain't got time for that. No, you need to make the time so they can do what you said you need it to be done. It's us when we lack and stay off of those same people that we voted for in office to stay on top of them, to guarantee that what they say they were going to do for you while they were in office, to do those things they said they were going to do for you in office. So never stop your voice. Continually make your voice known. You can contact them through their office. They're always willing to talk to their constituents. And remember, if they don't, they're going to want to run again. And you can be that constituent to say, look here, I tried you. I even tried connecting and you didn't. So this is what I'm going to tell my community. We have to make sure that when we vote a person and we're voting them in and holding them accountable for the things they said on their path to election, to being elected as our elected official, to have that voice for the people. So your voices do count. Never think your voice don't count. It does.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you shared that. Just a word of encouragement, right? Just a word of encouragement to individuals out there. And when we think about, there's something we had a conversation around, Brenetta, that I'd like for you to share. You touched on the fact that you're not afraid to put out questions to the folk who are making decisions, right? And we were speaking about the fact that I am really, really clear in my mind that we're not going back. Institutional racism has to end. The systemic oppression has to end. And your voice is a way and one strategy. And I speak about the fact that it's multi-complex, but we have multiple strategies for the eradication, right? And bringing your voices is so critical. Speak to us a little bit about how do you use your voice in all of these committees to address the oppression, the disparities, and so forth. Just any of the committee, you can choose any, or you can just speak in general.
Well, I'm going to speak on one of the committees that I sit on, and then I'm going to speak in general. As far as utilizing my voice, I choose not to work for systems because it bounds my voice. It limits my voice to what it is I can say. I mean, you can say certain things, but you can't step over boundaries. So I choose to be that advocate that works for myself, to advocate for my community so I can say the things that need to be said, and it won't be any backlash on any organization or anything like that, because I am speaking for the community, for myself, for my families, and it's a conversation that you say you're ready to have, but you're not. So now, since you say you're ready to have, let's have that conversation and let's put it in the public eye so we can have it. Let's bring it out in the open now. You want to talk about equity? Let's talk about it. And what I tend to tell my parent and my consumer leaders is, we're no longer going in there angry and mad. We're going in there with the solution. So when we say something is going on, you're not thinking out the box like us because you don't live where we live. We know what we can get to handle this problem to make it equitable for all of us. You cannot no longer consider to sit in these legislative tables and make the decisions regarding us when you don't live where we live. You don't look like us. You're not getting the service delivery at us. You live over there in that section. I live here. It's no longer when funding comes trickling down and you ask us for input into focus group that once the dollars come down, it's going up there in Greenwich and Hartford isn't getting anything. No, you ask for our opinion on these dollars. I want to know where these dollars are going before I even get input into it and hold you accountable when you say these dollars are going to roll in. We are no longer sitting back, just letting things be done on the same as usual. We are no longer being that dot to that I and that cross to that T. We are being there. We need to be true partners, and we're gonna be that partner. It's no more, okay, we hear, no, you hear us, you do, or you don't get. Simple as that. And we need to know it's our voice that can do that. Look at Georgia, what happened in Georgia, and now they're trying to cut it. But what I say to the people in Georgia right now, even if they stop those things, don't stop going to the poll. Take your tail still to that poll and show them you didn't stop anything.
Brenetta, I'm feeling you. I'm feeling you. I've been saying for years, and you know this, that the communities have been saying to stop raping the communities, coming and grabbing our intellectual information, our cultural information through focus group, going back, creating grants and proposal, and nothing trickles down, so to speak, to the communities that they've taken the information
Right.
from. Right? No more of that. So I echo it, I echo it, I echo it. The piece that I want you to move right into now is, and I just want to piggyback on something else that Merva used to say, nothing for us without us. Don't you be creative.
Yeah.
Don't conceptualize anything, design anything, don't implement anything and talk about monitoring and evaluating without us at the table. And the us is whoever the service is supposed to be impacting. They need to be part of the
Yeah.
conceptualization process all the way out. So I'm
Yeah.
echoing what you're saying there. No more tokenism. That's not
There you go.
happening.
There
That's
you
not
go.
happening. We're not going back. And we're not going to pretend that when you say that we have access, that we actually have access. We know
Right.
what's inequity. COVID has
Exactly.
really just lifted off the covering, and we know. Some of us knew all along, but many
Right.
more of us are knowing that now.
Yes.
So let me go right into the voice thing again, because this is that platform. You have this platform for your voice to echo around the world. Talk to us a bit about the the Consumer Advisory Committee. And I'm talking about the Connecticut Behavioral Health Partnership Advisory Committee, Consumer Advisory Committee. When I was the vice president of the Connecticut Behavioral Health Partnership, connected with Value Options, that committee work began inside of the peer and systems department. And
Right.
I oversaw that committee coming in after Barbara, who was there, right? Since then, my goodness, the committee, what y'all are doing is phenomenal. So please share what your mindset is about consumer driven initiatives and councils and what ICANN conference is.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked about that. Um, we in 2014, we were at a Consumer and Family Advisory Council meeting, and it came up. We need to get our voice out there. We need to do something that has never been done before, that we're driving. So we came up with, hey, let's do a conference. Good. We figured out we'll do this conference. It's called the I Can Conference. And the reason it's called the I Can Conference is because I can make a difference. I can make systemic change. I can have that voice that needs to be at that table. And not only that, I will do this. You know what I'm saying? So we had formed this, and the first year was a success. So we was like, okay, we did this, Going to the second year, it got even bigger. We started out with maybe like 86 to 100 participants coming to the conference. We are now up to almost 300 persons attending this conference and eager to attend. So it's been 6 years for this conference. And this year, we missed last year because of COVID, but this year we will put it on virtually. It's going to be a new format, but it just teaches us as consumers that we can be a driving force. And my thing to the consumers is, we're not letting anyone take control of this, because as we were starting, because we have to come up with our own funding. So we have to go out there, initiate, vendors and donations and things such as that nature. So we reached out to a couple of people, and some systems attached themselves where we were looking for those donations, because they had a RFP or whatever, they had some type of initiative going on where they connected with us. We thought they were giving us funding. Oh, but because you have people working in this office, now you're taking credit for things consumers drove, things the idea consumer had, and the big corporation comes in and you're presenting this, but you're presenting it with none of us at the table. And when I brought up the conversation, why weren't any of us there? It was told to me and one of my advisors, my people were there, and we donated money, which I had been saying all along. There's a catch, and that's what we have to stop doing. Letting people attach ourselves to our ideas and promoting off the things that we're doing and we get the credit for, and let these big businesses know it's not them. It was us that started this, that created this. It was us. Pour the dollars into us who is creating these things. Not only that, even with the grassroots, we look at grassroots organizations. They're doing the basics of the work, where these big organizations are getting top dollars and the grassroots are getting this amount, but they are connecting with the families and getting the families the services they need, where the big corporations say, oh, we can help you with this, but they're going to attach themselves to you and give you a little piece of the pie where you're getting the millions of the pie. No, we're no longer having that. If we cannot be a part of that RFP from conception, adding our name to that, adding our name to the pot of what we're going to get that's going to come to our community to help the families we serve, we are no longer going to be a part of it, because what people fail to realize is they need you as much as we need them. And they can't do it without you. We have to come in the mindset of, you need us. What is our value worth?
That's right.
Start getting our worth, our value.
That's
and
right.
Until we as a community stand firm and say, we're valued more than that. Give us more than that. No more tokenism. You're not going to select the family to represent us. We're going to select the family to represent us.
Ooh. Brenetta, I think you have given a lot of gems and ideas and some pieces for folk, whether they're in the funding role as private foundation, local, state, national funders, or if they're providers, leaders, practitioners, community leaders. You've given a lot in that piece that you just shared for them to think about. When we're thinking, and I've said this, and I've said it many times, that funders contribute to institutional racism, the maintenance of institutional racism, with their practices associated with their requests for proposal, and the way in which they actually do their oversight and their monitoring of the actual programs once they're funded.
Right.
One of the things that I'd like for you to speak to as we go forward with this process here is the stipend. So I've been in this for so long now, almost 3 decades, almost 30 years. And I remember back at Catholic Charities when Merv and I would sit and we would figure out how much money is going to be allocated and what is it that the agency is going to give in terms of stipend. Subsequent to that, almost all of the tables that I go to, the conversation about stipends come up. One of the, just so that everyone know what I'm going to ask you about, for you who are viewing, this piece about stipend is a big piece. We have folk who sit at tables from 9 to 5 during their regular work hours, 9 to 5 that are paid. Some folk come and sit at the table and instead of giving input or being present, they're literally getting caught up on their emails. But they're getting paid. There are other folks invited, parents, family members, community members, who are brought in to share their thoughts, their ideas, their creativity with the group. They're not paid. Often they are not paid. But what has been brought to them is the idea of getting a stipend. It may be, depending on the group, a gift card to Stop and Shop, or a gas card, or $75 here, or maybe $250. But really, it's a stipend. It's a little bit of monies that does not equate to or even look anything like what the other folk who are sitting at the table during their 9 to 5 getting paid. Right? So I know for some, including myself, we work outside of the system. So we're not beholden to anyone at all in that regard. But there are folk who may have to go to these meetings, and we're saying, and I've heard you say this, stipends should be done away with. Instead, employment should be offered.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak just a little bit about all of that and the dynamics associated with it?
I just think that our time is just as much worthy as a person that's getting paid to sit there, if not even more, because it's the family engagement piece that your dollars are coming for. But you're paying your people to sit at this table. They're not family and they're not engaging. So why aren't our families getting the dollars that your people is getting just sitting there? And they're the families that are being engaged. Employ them. We have to get our families to know you're more than a stipend. They need you more than you think you need yourself. But because some of these families are in need, they go and it's not addressed for the fear of it being taken away. As long as I sit at a table, I'm going to always push for families to be fully employed from implementation to conception of anything that we do. You're not just going to get our ideas and then take the ball and run with, hey, we came up with this was us. No, that was the family engagement. Families engaged on that to do that. So it needs to be started. And I thank Branchman Wilson for giving me this idea, because we were in a meeting at the System of Care where RSP came through and they wanted us to come aboard with them. And he was like, no, the only way we come aboard, he made a motion. Let's vote on this. You need to give our family something in order for us to agree with this body, agree with being a part of this RFP. You come back to this table with our parents inside this RFP with something for them, and then we'll think about adding our names to this RFP. We have to start thinking about that. And it was done. It was done. Even though I don't like stipends, we got them. There was dollars given for the family. See, a lot of them say, oh, the stipends are for transportation and childcare. Well, what about the input that we've given? That's not valuable. So you just paying for me to get there, but the information I'm giving you ain't valuable. It's valuable for your people to sit around this table and do nothing and doodle and answer their emails. And you take our IDs. Something has to give. But we have to all be pushing in that same manner to make sure that we're employed on those same levels. And when we're talking about family engagement and workforce development, those pieces are really included in workforce development, developing something for our families to be working and showing equity in the work that you're doing and making sure they're employed to the full extent. And I know I talk a lot with my hands. It's just that I'm so passionate about things that affects my community and my people. And I say my people, everybody is my people, but mainly people of color that are really disenfranchised.
Thank you, Brenetta. So, I want to touch on budget allocation stuff. I want to touch on the line item, linguistic appropriate services. I want to go. There's so much in my head. We're going to have a second interview. All right. So let me just capture this piece though. Speak to us about, and I'm always saying, when folk are putting together their budget, if you look at the line items, you see the priorities. You see it. Often translation, interpretation, those services, monies for them are not necessarily captured, not consistently, right? We're not going to generalize everyone. We do know, one, there are people in the system that's working diligently. They are empathetic. They're full of empathy, actively listening, participating, contributing to development of programs and services. We know that they're present, but we also tell the truth about those who come to the table, and it's just another meeting for them. And it's no, it's time to go. Is it time to go yet? That kind of we're going to tell the truth on this platform around that. The other piece is when we think about even now, I was having a conversation with Brenetta, and she was sharing with me that it's not often that people are thinking about how to set up the platform so that individuals can have access to the information outside of English speaking. It's a concern for her. Years in the inception of the norms, the class standards, culturally and linguistically appropriate services norms that was pushed out to be in the behavioral health realm and expanded. I was there in the beginning in Washington, D.C. I was a co-chair for the Joint Commission with DCF because I was a co-chair of the Children Behavioral Health Advisory Council. So part of the children and adult councils, the co-chairs were participating in this block grant development piece. And so I participated going out and the norms were being introduced. In my conversation with Brenetta, she said, Alice, you've been talking about the norms, the class standard for years. But what happened when COVID came around? That's what I want you to hear her share about. What was your concern? I mean, you ticked me there. You were so concerned about this. Go ahead. Just share for a moment.
I mean, it's just that when COVID came, it just came more inevitable that they're not even seeing this. I mean, it's bad enough while we were in person. Excuse me, the same people that are pushing class being culturally and linguistically appropriate, you're not even having translation equipment there at the table for those Latino speaking population. But we're talking about, excuse me,
yes,
culturally and linguistically appropriate services. So when COVID came around, it's like, do you have a Zoom lens for those participants? Now they're participating in these meetings. You don't even know whether they're understanding what you're talking about. But yet you can still check off, you have people of the Latino population attending these meetings. But you have no sense of communication with them. So my thing is, how are you communicating with them? I know when COVID came with the consumer and families, that's one of the first things we thought about. How do we get our Spanish-speaking people aboard this and making sure that they're a part of the meeting and their input is still in there? So we have two Zoom lenses, a Spanish-speaking and English-speaking. So why does the consumer have to come to you, people who are getting the dollars, who are talking about culturally and linguistically appropriate service, aren't even thinking about, because of the pandemic, we're still shutting out our Latino population. But the dollars are there to stipend those families. You don't even know whether they're getting the information, the input correct.
Brenetta, I know you're speaking from your heart. We've seen it. We've been in meetings. We fought to get translation services and devices to the focus groups. We fought because everyone was saying they didn't have dollars for it. They didn't have dollars for it, but yet they wanted the engagement to happen. Right. So I appreciate you putting that on the platform and for sharing that with me in the beginning of our conversation earlier this week. I really appreciate it. So again, I'm just going to speak to the viewers. This is Alice just saying, please use what you're hearing to help you reflect, to think about, to see where your organization is, to see what in fact is being said, if there's anything in there that's hitting home to your organization or hitting home to the committees that you're part of. See what changes you might need to make in order to become a more equitable, focused, and consumer-driven system, if you will. So now I'm going to switch over, Brenetta, to ask you a few of the questions that I asked all interviewing. And you touched on a couple of these things, but I want to give you the opportunity to answer them directly. COVID-19, the 2020 into 2021, we have the intersection of that COVID-19 and all the horrific things and the loss, the separation, the death, the anxiety, the messaging, the inequities. Now we have the vaccination, and I saw just an email just coming out speaking about equity related concerns around vaccination dissemination in the communities that we are very much part of, in particular of people of color. And we had the intersection with the civil unrest, the racial reckoning, and that's based in this white supremacist or white supremacy, and the just all the disparities and the inequities. And then we have, in addition, that intersection of the shadow pandemic, where we're seeing internationally, globally, the increase in domestic violence around the same time. And of course, we have the opiate epidemic still going on and so much more. So if you can share just your perspective, your experience over the last, from 2020 into recent months in 2021. We'll just start with that.
Wow. My things is the Black African American community is always the community that gets the lack of information, lack of supplies, lack of anything. But when we talk about the mental health and the violence, domestic violence, and things such as that nature, it's new to you. Now you want to put dollars into clinical services and things such as that nature. It's been something that's been plaguing our communities, but you brush it under the rug. The opioid epidemic, when that came out, we have to do something about it. Why? Because it poured over into the Caucasian population. It turned over into the elite communities, where our servicemen came home from Vietnam War addicted to heroin, dying in the streets of overdose. But nothing was said. We cried out for funding to keep our rehabilitation services open, but who is the first ones to close out when dollars are coming off the chopping block? Our community. So how do we really address the opioid epidemic? Now there's funding coming down for the substance abuse disorder, coming down from the feds. Now you want to do focus groups on how people who are in rehab does this. Okay, how are you going to rehab our communities? This is what I want to know now, since we're in this and you're trying to get those federal dollars here. What communities are you going to service, and how are you going to trickle those funds out to serving the communities of color? It never tends to amaze me or surprise me that it's not until it surfaces in your community that now it becomes an epidemic. We've been dealing with childhood suicide for the longest because of traumatic things that are going on in our communities, and there was no dollars poured into our communities then. I'm just keeping it real.
Yes.
So it's like, we have to stop this waiting till it pour over to another ethnicity before things can start. You talk about equality. Let's talk about the things that are happening that aren't happening in your community right now, so we can tap onto those things in our community. So when it pour over into your community, you have some type of leeway of how you can handle it because you're handling it in our community. So,
Brenetta, I know for a fact that someone is going to replay and replay and replay this part here because it's resonating. It really is resonating. And we've heard it. It's documented historically. I mean, it's documented what the patterns have been in terms of issues and concerns that happen, and what are public health concerns, and when funding is released, and so on. It's well documented. But I want to pull it right back now to us and you. I want to hear from you. What are your lessons, the lessons learned from during 2020 to 2021? You've mentioned a few, but any personal or professional lessons that you've learned that you can share with us?
The main lesson is that I have to stay steadfast in what it is that I'm doing. I can't let this pandemic stop my voice.
Mm.
I cannot let this pandemic shut down the service delivery to the families that we need served in the community. I cannot let this pandemic tell my people they don't have a voice. I
Mm.
cannot let this pandemic stop me from training leaders to become leaders to have the voice in the community. That's what it's taught me. I have to do it even more now because we don't know whether another pandemic is coming up. So I want you to be ready when that time comes, that you will not shut down your voice and you will continue to move steadfast in what it is that we need. We cannot let this pandemic halt the things that are necessary in our community.
Wow. Got it. Got it. Speak to me about the place that you think you've had the greatest impact. I asked all the interviewees this, whether it's in whatever platform, where do you think you've had the greatest impact over the last year or so? Where would that be?
Being at the tables. Being at the tables, I wouldn't trade it for the world, and forcing the conversations that they never thought that would be brought up to bring up and start to hold you accountable to the things that you said you would do. Being at the table.
So, with that statement, I just want you to take 2 minutes just to tell folk what the benefits of working and partnering with individuals with lived experience. Right now, and we had this conversation, some providers are having a tough time figuring out how to work with individuals with lived experiences who will bring their voices to those meetings. Some of them are not having a tough time. They just don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's shared power, power over all those conversations we've had. And then some of them are fearful. So just speak to that for a moment, and then I'll ask you just 2 more things, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. First of all, it's very important to have people with lived experience, especially when you're doing work in the community, because, as I stated, in order to get employed in that type of field, you have to have a degree. Well, we have the best degree there is. We have that lived experience. You can't come out of school and tell me what to do if you have not walked in my shoes. You cannot change a system because you don't know how to change it, because you don't know what I dealt with. I have a better look on how to change that system than you do because I know what outlets I need. You don't. So without my voice, how do you change something that you have no affiliation with,
Mm,
that you had no experience with?
mm,
That's like, okay, I broke my leg, but you're only going to cast up the part around the bottom of my foot. You're not going to get the ankle. You're not going to get the leg part where the femur and all that other stuff is. You're just going to touch on something because you in the community. No, 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 no. You got to heal me fully. And in healing me fully, I need to connect with somebody who understands me, understands what I've been through, can tell me that I can trust working with these agencies and what are some of the avenues that I can go through. You have to have a trusting, building relationship with families in order for them to even grasp on things that you are doing. And if you don't have those lived experience, that family member is going to say, how are you going to tell me that? You ain't even been through that. You just getting out of school. What can you tell me?
got it.
Just necessary. Just necessary. So peer-to-peer is definitely employable, and they need to start employing people with lived experience in those positions. And you shouldn't have to have a degree because it said lived experience.
Ooh, ooh, Brenetta, thank you. Thank you so much. I am certain that funders and providers alike and community folk will be listening to what you're saying right there. Lived experience, the value, the benefit, informed practices, informed policies, informed program development, inform the culture of an organization. So critical, so critical. And as we're thinking about equity and dismantling institutional racism, it is even more critical. So, Brenetta, if you can now take us to just one quote, either a quote or a statement. Let's say, for example, in 2039, hopefully it doesn't happen, but because we live in this world, things may happen. But there's a crisis, and someone looks back and see this video. What comment or statement or quote can you share with that person to encourage them during their time of crisis? What would that be?
I think I would say, and I tried to write something down because I really don't have a quote, but I would tell them, we all are born with a purpose. You know, we have to reflect on the lived experience and see where it can be most effective for equitable and systemic change. That's what I would tell them. Utilize your lived experience to be effective in anything that you need. Know that your lived experience can bring change and bring that voice that is needed. So that's what I would say.
Captured, Brenetta. And you're going to get the last word with this. The creativity, Kwanzaa principle number 6, speak to creativity. Making our communities, by whatever we do, more beautiful than when we encountered it or when we came into it. So going forward, 2021, what's next for you, or what will you be doing that you know will continue to develop your community or to leave it in a really more beautiful place? What would that be?
Well, I'm in the phase of that right now. I'm trying to train leaders to sit in the positions where I am, because I'm one to like to pass the baton. I'm trying to position the leaders that I'm working with to start sitting in on meetings, see how that meeting is ran. How do you get those inputs? I'm positioning leaders to take on roles where they're chairing and they're co-chairing and they're having that voice. That is the creativity that I'm doing. I'm trying to get them to think out of the box. Don't think of the circumstance. Think of a solution. You know, that's where I'm going in the creativity, because all things aren't just checks and balances. We have to think out of the box sometimes to create something to make it work in our favor.
My goodness. With that said, we are going to wrap up today. And I just want to thank you so much, Brenetta. I know you're heading off now, and I just want to express my appreciation because you spoke from your heart. You told us what you thought. You gave us insight about all the different questions that I put out there for you. And it is so much appreciated. And I want to take a moment just to acknowledge Merva Jackson again and her contribution to you. Molly Cole, her contribution to you. Beresford Wilson, his contribution to you. Sheila Harris and the work as she worked with you. And we worked together in connection with AFCAM. I just want to close out with that. Merva Jackson's legacy continues because we see many of the people that she's worked with and nurtured sitting in high position, leadership position, leading folk in the state of Connecticut and beyond. So thank you again, Brenetta.
Thank you. And I want to thank you. Don't leave you out, because you are a big mentor to me as well. I mean, you, Merva, and Beresford were the 3 biggest mentors that I could ever ask for, and has taught me so much throughout my 21 years at this. So, but you new leaders, we need you to come up and step up to the plate. So,
yes, beautiful. All right. Take good care, Brenetta. We will see you. And you're coming back for a second time.
Will do.
Beautiful.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. As always, we will keep it real on this show. Time is of the essence. And I know you can feel that each time you listen to one of my videos. Time is of the essence. We cannot go back. Dismantling institutional racism or the eradication of such cannot be a play by word or a word that is thrown out there as part of a fact. This is real. This is our lives. The experiences of individuals in our communities are so horrific at times, particularly because of the systemic oppression, because of the inequities, because of the lack of access to equitable services, to equitable and just fair treatment inside of the juvenile justice system, inside of the Department of Correction related systems, and inside of child welfare across systems. We need voices at the table. We need to diversify the voices at the table. We need to make it a priority as organizations and agencies. You have the role of making sure that your policies and your practices are not contributing to the maintenance of systemic and institutional oppression and racism. You have a responsibility to do this and do it now so that we can have a legacy that we leave for our children and our children's children that we can be proud of. Do take the gems and the ideas and the strategies that Brenetta Henry shared throughout her story, throughout her experiences, throughout her responses. Embedded are the strategies and the ideas around parent, family, community engagement, amplification of voices of the traditionally marginalized and disenfranchised. So much inside of her story. As always, take good care of yourself, your family, and your communities. And that will be it for Around the World with and Back with Dr. Alice Farrell. Thank you for stopping by and take good care.